It's 6:07 at WPSL, the talk of the Treasure Coast. The views expressed on the following program are not necessarily those of WPSL, but you are encouraged to like and share them on Facebook. It's time for Rudy Howard's African American Scene, brought to you by Howard Insurance in Port St. Lucie and hosted by Rudy Howard.
Good evening, good evening, good evening. Always glad to be with you here on a Wednesday night. There's plenty of stuff going on, that's for sure. I am supposed to be having my guest, who is on her way here, I presume, to talk about immigration. So one of the things that let me tell you why this show. I am not an immigrant, but I see immigrants as fellow Americans. We are a nation of immigrants. There is a fear of the browning of America, which is irrational. I want you to get that. The fear of the browning of America is irrational. America was brown before it was white.
Absolutely.
And I want my listeners to get that. America was brown. It started out being brown. As of today, the population under 18 is more brown than white. Did you hear that? I want you to get that.
That's true. That absolutely.
Yes. As of today, the population under 18 is the majority brown. So you can't stop it from happening. It's going to happen.
Actually, it's been that way for a little while now.
Yeah.
But it's official now. Absolutely.
Well, you the point is, you're not going to stop it. The way this argument is being made, where there are racial overtones, and it is wrong. I have said this many times before, so if you're a regular listener, please indulge me. Parts of California was in Mexico. Parts of Arizona was in Mexico.
Then the big clue.
Yeah, parts of New Mexico was in Mexico.
I'll bet you some folks find that hard to believe, but it's true.
Yes. And parts of Texas were in Mexico. So why do I tell you that? I'm trying to awaken your consciousness to accept that because somebody has brown skin does not mean they are an immigrant. That's the mistake I don't want you to make. Most of my white brothers and sisters who I have belong on organizations with would never make that mistake. So I'm trying to save you from making that mistake. Some of our brown brothers and sisters were here long before you or your family got here. Do you understand? They were here. They may have had families that go back generations in Arizona or California or New Mexico.
That's right. And a lot of my ancestors were immigrants. But now, here's the catch. Your ancestors were not immigrants, were they?
No. No. And here's the thing, and I've talked about this before. Boy, African Americans are as American as you can get, because while they call us African American, I don't know anything but America. My family doesn't know anything but America. I can't trace back a single family member. I haven't done a family tree, but I would imagine if I trace back my family roots, I know part of my family roots because I had an Aunt Lucy who had long hair, a long plait. She was an Indian. And just keep in mind, Puerto Rico is part of the U.S. So if somebody speaks Spanish, it does not mean they don't belong here. It just means they speak Spanish. And now let me give you another awakening. The arrogance of America. Most countries are at least bilingual, and many are trilingual. America is one of the only countries that is monolingual, so which is majority monolingual. So keep that in mind. Now, to my Spanish brothers and sisters, as a matter of courtesy, and I've had this discussion with my good friend Rene Arteaga, it is kind of polite to not speak Spanish and exclude the people that you're sitting in company with. That's just, I have no problem with you speaking Spanish, but it's kind of impolite to do that if you're sitting among people and all they speak is English. So,
well, yeah, but now on the other hand, if somebody might be a little unstable, be a little paranoid, thinking that they're speaking in another language because they're talking about me.
Well, yes, of course, that's what people think.
Yeah.
But so that's why I'm saying to my Spanish brothers and sisters, listen, my assistant is Cuban. And she frequently gets on the phone and speaks in Spanish. And it doesn't bother me. And I have some of my customers prefer to talk to her rather than me because she does speak Spanish. Okay. But just be a little conscious of it. But I defend your right to speak your native tongue. There's nothing wrong with that at all. Marisol's not here. And I have a show all planned out for next week because I'm gonna talk about something Clifford, the guy called up, not you, Cliff.
The other Cliff that calls the show.
Yeah,
not the engineer of the show.
He called up and complained that the number one problem in America is that people want to change things. And I am prepared to take issue with that for sure. And next week I'm going to talk about the economy because, I'm really aggravated that the GOP is using their socialism ploy. And basically what they're doing is anybody that is not an avowed capitalist is a socialist. And that's garbage.
Oh, they're repainting the portrait of individuals now.
Yes, it's just total garbage. But it's designed, just like with immigration, to create fear, to make people think that the government wants to take over their lives. And for a person like me, who is an entrepreneur, and many of my friends own businesses too, while we advocate change, and we must change the current economic profile, socialism is not one of the things that I want to change to. But there's various techniques and models that we can use to create change, and I have researched those, and they're sitting on my desk because that was for next week's show.
That'll be interesting because we'll be able to point out that maybe it's more necessarily people who are afraid of change because somebody wants to impose the change on them.
Yes.
So there'll be a lot of opponents to that for that reason.
But listen, I was talking to Carol earlier, and her and I got a good laugh because the first day when I was a trainee at Travelers, and I walked into the receptionist area where they were typing all the reports. The tops of all the desks were blue. Now, most of you out there are saying the tops of the desks were blue. What the heck is he talking about? News flash. In 1974, there was no photocopiers.
Oh.
Can you believe that? 1974, there was no photocopiers. So when they were typing documents, they had to use carbon paper.
Absolutely, I remember that. Remember those
Yes.
hand-rolled machines that would make copies?
Yes.
And it would print out blue because it had like a carbon.
That's right. So the girls would have
Temple.
all blue all over their hands.
Yep.
And it would be blue all on top of the desk. And think about think about that change, just that change alone, that has allowed people to stop using carbon paper. And you imagine how hard it was to make a correction when you were typing with carbon paper?
I did a lot of stuff with that carbon paper back in the day, and you had to start all over again on a new template sheet.
Yes. And we got Winnie on line 1. How you doing, my friend?
Hey, Winnie. Yeah,
Yes,
that's you,
how
Winnie.
you doing? Okay. No. Abraham Lincoln was not. No, Abraham Lincoln wasn't black, no. No, not at all. No, he wasn't black. No, he wasn't. Yeah, no, he wasn't. Okay, take care. Well,
That's what happens when people say things and somebody hears them and they go, well, we're going to check that out. I wonder if that's true.
yeah,
And I can see why they would say that.
I can too.
You know, you look at the weather-beaten face of many years of a man
Yeah.
who would work outside and things like that. And I guess it would be easy to assume that maybe because somebody said it, it's true. But hey, if you've got a question about anything like that, we can verify because Rudy does his homework, and that was not a no-brainer. But still, she was concerned because she'd heard that.
Well, I'm glad she called to get
yeah.
it straight.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's talk a little bit about immigration. You know, I was hoping that Marisol would be here because she could put a lot of the garbage that you've been fed to rest. But first off, I know of only one Democrat in my circle that believes in open borders. The rest of us do not believe in that, and all of us, to some extent, believe in border security. I think it's perfectly fine to have some security of your borders. But by the same token, we have been a country that has allowed people that were being persecuted or under desperate circumstances to seek asylum in our nation. I would not like to see us go away from that because we're concerned about the color that our nation is turning. You know,
I think the problem that with most, let's say, old white guys like me, or I'm not like that, but I'd say old white guys like me, might not be able to tell the difference between, well, let's say a Muslim terrorist coming across the border and a Mexican coming across the border because the skin tone might be similar enough that most white folks wouldn't even notice the difference. Where it's easy to notice if you know.
well, here's I have my 50th high school reunion coming up in October. So I've been having some communication with some of the guys and gals that I went to high school with. And one of the guys I went to high school with, he slipped and said something one day, which let me know where he was at and probably where a lot of people was at. And he said to me, "Don't you want to preserve the America we have?" And I said, "Well, I don't believe you said that." He said, "But don't you want to preserve the America we have?" So as if people that's coming in here is not going to preserve the America that we have.
It's two different perceptions. And it's
Yeah,
the perceptions that are at war, not the people.
That's exactly right. It's the perception that these people are going to come in here and they're going to turn our nation upside down, and this is no longer going to be the America that we know. Well, there
was a flaw in the America we knew. The America we know now is getting a little better.
Yeah, and here's the other thing too that we talk about. If you criticize America, you don't love America. I don't know where that garbage came from, but that's pure garbage. And I don't care. You want to call up and fight about that? We can fight about that all night long. If you criticize America, that does not mean you do not love America. And from my perspective, you don't love America any more than I do. But when I criticize America because I wish for her to be better. Not because I don't love her. I want her to be better. And if my criticism can help to make her better, then that criticism will come out of my mouth. But it doesn't mean that I don't love America, because I do love America. I love my country.
If your father was going to make a terrible financial mistake, well, you're not hating him for saying, hey, don't do that. That's not the right thing to do. You better reconsider that because this is what could happen. And you don't hate your father because of that.
Right.
You're not hating America because if there's an injustice going on and you can see it, then hey, like you hear all the time, if you see something, say something, that means keep an eye on things. Yeah, watch out for yourself and watch out for others, because it's not all bad just because somebody thinks it's bad.
And look, some of the perceptions that you have been ingrained in you from childhood, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Let me give you one, for example, and I may have talked about this before too. Tarzan, the most racist movies and TV series in the history of the United States. Purely racist. One white man goes into the heart of Africa and beats the snot out of all these fierce African warriors and controls all the animals.
Wow.
Now think about that for a second.
Wow.
And listen, I grew up loving Tarzan until I got old enough to figure out what all of that meant. And so you grow up seeing this one white guy,
the king of the jungle.
Yes, king of the jungle. He goes in and he controls all the black people, and all the animals bow down to him. So there's a subliminal message going on as you are a kid growing up with that, okay? And when they made the new Tarzan not too long ago, I guess maybe about 2-3 years ago, I went to go see it just to see, did they make corrections? And the answer is huge corrections.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Well, I went to see it just to see what they were going to do.
Well, yeah, good idea.
In the new Tarzan, the Africans were his sidekicks.
Oh. Well, yeah.
They fought with him.
Yeah.
When he was doing battle in the jungle.
If I had to go fight a lion, I wouldn't mind having a few brothers around to help.
Oh, yeah.
My goodness.
And he took on the gorilla, who was the son of his mother who raised him, and the gorilla beat the snot out of him. Wow. So I sat there and I was giggling because the old Tarzan, he would have beat the gorilla to a pulp.
Yep,
you know,
absolutely.
Which of course was not realistic, but in this, the gorilla just beat the snot out of him. But so you have those kinds of messages that you grow up with, and they give you subliminal thoughts that you have to deal with, and you go, oh, okay. So as you grow to become a man, it's like imprints in your soul and in your mind that you may not even thought of. Just like we did here, I think this was about 2 years ago. I did a show and I asked the question, when you think about welfare, what do you think about? Most people will tell you when they think about welfare, they think about black people. Newsflash, big newsflash.
Oh.
There's far more many white people on welfare than there's black people. Far more. Ain't even close. But when you think about welfare, because of what Ronald Reagan said about the welfare queen, you think welfare, you think black people.
Wow.
So, and let me tell you why that's important. So when Reverend Al and Jesse Jackson are fighting to try to keep cuts from happening to SNAP or food stamps, newsflash, they're really fighting for white folks. Because they're the ones that's going to get hurt worse by it than the black folks, because there's more of them collecting that benefit.
Well, yeah. Basically, now you look at the poor in general globally, and if they've got some help for supplements, that's fine. That's wonderful. But the perception is the white folks don't need this help.
Yes,
but it's not true.
Of course, it's not true.
And it's harder for folks who aren't used to that than it is for folks who it's been commonplace their whole lives.
Right.
I mean, when you were a kid, I know you didn't starve growing up. You don't look a bit starved to me at all.
Yeah,
but,
right.
but I bet you there were some lean times when it probably could have been a little bit better. But, you didn't base your life decisions because you, once in a great while, didn't have enough to eat. I mean, you were able to cope with it. It was easy to cope with. Now, there's some folks, if that were to happen to them, they would just totally lose it.
Oh, yeah. Listen, there's a famous book that was written by Studs Terkel, and it's called Hard Times by Studs Terkel. And one of the things that Studs talks about in his very famous book was about the Depression.
Yeah.
And he was talking about how in the Depression, white people were jumping off of bridges and jumping out of windows.
Yep.
Because of the trauma to their life, and black folks was dealing with it because they've had to deal with it.
They were used to it. It was
right.
It was nothing for them.
Right. They were like, okay, I'm sorry it's affecting you like that, but I mean, this is what we've been dealing with all along. So, yes. So, yeah, but that is, but what I want you to really, on this immigration thing is, it's about humanity. And those brown brothers and sisters, they're your brothers and sisters. They're fellow Americans. Now, some of them may be here illegally. If you want to complain about that, okay, I get it. But for those people that are here, stop making such a big deal about it. Because let me tell you, I'll say, I think I said this too before. I said to one of my friends, one of my conservative friends, we're not friends anymore because he got so pissed off at me about Trump. But I said, okay, you want to stop immigration? I said, okay, let's stop it. No more. No more people picking fruit. No more people picking vegetables. No more people serving you in a hotel. Done.
We tried something like that a couple of times, didn't we?
Right.
The day, what was it? The day without any immigrants. Remember that? A few years back, they were all going to boycott work that day.
Yeah.
And no immigrants were going to go to work that day. And in fact, it was...
It was in May, I remember it.
I worked for one of those companies, very culturally There's a
Diverse.
lot diverse, and well, the company said to the Hispanic workers that if you want to go ahead and take the day off, go right ahead. They had full support, and what did we learn? Good grief! There are some jobs out there that white people will not do.
There's
know?
jobs out there that black people don't want to do
when,
either.
when I was an older teenager, almost a young adult, I went out there. Me and my buddy, we were going to try picking fruit to see what that would be like, and we found out that a 4-foot by 4-foot bin that would get $4 to fill up would have taken us like 4 days to fill up.
Right, right.
But because we just couldn't handle that kind of work, and we've seen people come in and those trees, the fruit would be gone in no time, and bins full everywhere. How do they do it? Well, it's a work thing that they're used to doing.
Yeah.
White folks are not conditioned for that.
And listen, I don't know how often you go away, but I can't remember the last time I stayed in a hotel and there was a white housekeeper. I don't remember.
Right.
Now, there may have been, but I don't remember the last time that I stayed in a hotel where there was a white housekeeper.
Wow.
They're almost all foreign.
Yeah.
You know, so
Even you go to Orlando, you'll see the same thing.
exactly. That's where we usually go when we get away. You know, and one of the places we like to go is Rose and Shingle Creek, which is a beautiful hotel and it's really huge. I have never seen a white housekeeper in that hotel.
Wow.
But so you know, and so I say all that to say, you know, be careful what you wish for.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it would be a hell of a thing if you go take your family on vacation and you have nobody to clean the room, nobody to make up the beds, and nobody to clean your bathroom. That would be pretty ugly.
Oh, yeah.
You know? So, and listen, they're making nothing hardly for doing those jobs.
Yeah, well, for a 4-by-4-foot box to fill with oranges was only $4 for filling it up. That's a 4-foot by 4-foot. You know, that's a 16 square feet by another 4 foot in bottom to top. I mean, it's a lot of space to fill for so little money, which was not something that I find myself able to do. It was like all day long and didn't even fill it up.
Oh yeah,
Two guys.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
couldn't do it. We couldn't do it.
But that's why we have to be more judicious about our thinking, because there's a trade-off there. So
Yeah.
what are you trying to prevent? Are you trying to prevent people from doing the work you don't want to do?
Oh, think about that. Yeah, think about that.
Yeah,
because
that's what I want them to
you don't
think
want to do
about.
the work anyway. You don't want to do the work, period. And you want to prevent somebody who's willing to do it from doing it.
Yeah.
And we need folks to do those types of jobs.
Well, I don't know about this year, but I know last year, toward the end of the growing season, there were several farmers that were complaining that some of the food product was going bad because they didn't have pickers. Because that's when we started with this immigration concern. So they didn't have people that was able to pick the vegetables or pick the fruits, and they were losing crops. So kind of interesting. So again, just be careful what you wish for. And we have Curtis. Yes, Curtis. Good. What's it called?
Dying.
Oh, no, I haven't. Uh-huh. And I haven't read that, but I did read a book called Angry White Men by Michael Kimmel. Have you read that one? Yeah, and he interviews white folks all across the nation to try to figure out why they're so angry, and it talks on some of the things that you're talking about, but I've heard that anyway from some people that uh, the biggest issue with the medical thing is I understand some of their angst because I sell the products. And the angst is I work hard. Why should all the subsidies go to the other people and I'm working out here busting my butt? Well, the idea of the subsidy was to provide subsidy for people who had no insurance. Okay, so they're going to get more of a subsidy than you get, and there's nothing wrong with that, but maybe what we should do is expand it so that the people higher up the chain get a little bit of help too. Right. Yeah, right. Yes, me too. Yes. Yes. So Curtis, I'm with you. I think that it is tragic. Look, I just lost my nephew a couple months ago who died at age 50 because he couldn't buy the diabetes medicine that he needed to live. That to me in 2019 is pure sinful. It shouldn't happen. It is. It is. It's ridiculous. Why should my nephew, age 50, be dead because he couldn't afford the expensive diabetes medicine? If anybody has diabetes, the medicine's expensive. Yes, you can. Yes. Yes. You're not going to make it. You're right. You're right. Well, well, well. Uh,
Interesting.
I have often said, Curtis, a little bit of a different dynamic. I believe there are the people in the middle who do not like injustice and they do not like inequality, but they're silent. But if you can prick their conscience and make them see it, they will respond. But they're just not going to make any noise. And I think that same thing is true about some of the Caucasian women. I think some of their conscience has been pricked because of the behavior of this president. And I truly believe when we have the next election, some of them are going to come out and just, they're not going to tolerate him. That's just my belief. Well, there is. Well, you missed my poll. I did a poll 2 weeks ago, and I asked how many people are ready to see a female president. And believe it or not, the majority said no. Right, Cliff? Was
Yeah, yeah.
the majority said no?
Yeah. Of course, now this is a mostly conservative audience that we've got because we
Yeah.
have a lot of the big conservative talk shows. So that's probably, I'd say, a given over there because well, they're not used to the information on this show. Some of the stuff on this show is being heard for the very first time ever by white folks because they'll say, "Oh, Rudy, you're pulling the race card." No, he's not. He's giving you information that you just didn't know about until now. Don't be offended by information because, hey, information is what makes it all go around.
Yeah.
No.
Well, okay, Curtis.
Mhm. Always. Hmm. Oh
Well,
yeah.
thank you so much, Curtis. That's very kind of you.
Yeah.
We
Appreciate
we
that.
do the best we can here on Wednesday nights.
All right.
Thank. Yes, thank you, sir.
All righty.
I appreciate you listening.
Yeah.
But yes, I tend to agree with him about one thing, for sure.
What's
And
that?
this is why it spurned a question from me 2 weeks ago. I do believe there would be a different flavor to the country if there was a woman in charge.
Oh yes. Absolutely.
I do.
There's other cultures where women were in charge.
Well, look at Angela Merkel from Germany. She's very well thought of by excuse me, by all of our allies too. Very capable, very capable woman. So I think we can. I'm okay with that. I'd like to see.
Explain Helen Keller.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of women right now
Hmm.
out there running that I think would be pretty awesome as president. Because here's what I think is important. And you've heard me talk about this before too. I want somebody who's very thoughtful because a lot of the issues that a president has to deal with are pretty lofty. And they require somebody that will think. And a lot of times, if you ever watched Obama, one of the things that they taught us in speech class, when my senior year college, I took a speech class, and one of the things they told you is people say, and you know, because they're trying to create a pause while they think.
Right.
If you ever watch Obama, he never does that because he just pauses and thinks. And I've watched him do that because of the training that I had. And I thought to myself, this guy is just so smart. And he thinks through things. And I've heard some of the people on his staff, like Gates, who was his defense guy, talk about how carefully he thought through things before he did them.
Did you know August Gabriel?
No.
He had the Stewart TV station years back.
Uh-huh.
The man was the most amazing listener I ever met. When you have a conversation with August Gabriel, you find yourself doing all the talking, and it's kind of gets uneasy. But the concept of it, it's very much like Well, we've got two ears and one mouth. We should listen twice as much as we talk.
Exactly.
And if we thought and listened more than we spoke, we might say something a little smarter come out of our mouth instead of some of the stupid stuff that's out there being said everywhere.
Now, and contrast, one of the things that I liked the most about President Obama, contrary to most people thinking, oh, you liked him because he was black. No, I liked him because I thought he was thoughtful. I liked him because I thought that before he would get us into any conflict, he would think it through all the way. I may not be happy with the decision that he finally comes up with, but I had no doubt in my mind that he would think that all the way through. Now, what scares the living daylights out of me about President Trump is he doesn't think about anything. He is a complete reactionary, spontaneous person, and I just find that frightening because it only take a blink of an eye to make a mistake and have us in a conflict that we didn't anticipate because you didn't take the time to think about what it is that you need to say to an adversary. So I think that we got some people out there right now in that Democratic field, men and women, who I'd be very comfortable with in terms of their intellectual capabilities. Because, not that I am some Einstein, but I am totally unimpressed with the intellectual capabilities of our current president. He just continues to make mistakes. He does things so rash without thinking them through and the consequences for the decision.
The folks that listen to this station can understand this. Rush Limbaugh talks about the drive-by media or the knee-jerk reactions, okay?
Yeah.
And what Rudy is explaining to you folks listening in is that our current president is very much into the knee-jerk reaction type of statements that he makes. It's usually whatever comes to his mind at the time, where a little more dignity for the office would probably be much more helpful.
Oh, yeah. And listen, here's a perfect example. And the other thing, too, with our current president, and you and I are old enough to have remembered this, I have never heard the media call the president a liar until President Trump. And all presidents, I'm not excluding anybody, I'm including Obama. All presidents twist the truth a little bit and make some adjustments to what they have to say. Some of it necessary, some of it unnecessary. But my God, this man tells lies like people breathe. And he tells lies that are just so obvious and open. And it's like, are y'all listening to that? Are you accepting his new lie about that? Oh, that. And so as a consequence of that, and see, we tend to be, as Americans, very arrogant in terms of not realizing that other people are paying attention. When he went to France and he went to England and he said Iran was responsible for damaging that Japanese cargo ship, they said, oh no, you're going to have to give us some more information. We're not satisfied with what you gave us. Now, think about that for a second. Just think about that. I'll bet you if Obama or George W. Bush had gone to our allies and said, here's what we assess has happened, there would have been a response without any question. But because of the precedent that our president has set, they're like, well, you know what? You're gonna have to give me some more information before I'm prepared to do any reaction to what you're trying to tell me. So, and that's scary. And I have said this. I have been preaching this for well over a year. There will come a time, because there always will be in the course of a presidency, when we will need our allies. And our allies have to believe and trust what we are telling them when we come to them with an issue. And because of the way our president handles himself, there may be some knee-jerk or hesitation or reluctance to respond, and that's not good, because that reluctance could be catastrophic. But we're setting the table for that right now because of a continuing lack of truthfulness when it comes to providing information to the public at large. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
All right.
But
Wow.
but again, like I said, we're going back. You know, I guess I'm really okay with a woman becoming president. If that happens, it'll be all right with me. I won't have any trepidations about that at all.
And if you're experiencing any contrast with that, just beware of thoughts you've developed as a result of subliminal messages you've been given all along.
Yes.
You got to be very careful of that, because your opinion is based on your thoughts, and if your thoughts were put in by somebody who's very good at it, by subliminal messages, well, they caught them in the theaters back in the 50s and such. You'd be at the movie house watching a movie, and all of a sudden, let's all go to the concession stand, and and all of a sudden you're looking at soda pop, crisp and delicious, and something flashed. Didn't see what it was, but it made you real thirsty, and you had to go buy something. You had to, it
yes,
was
you're right.
compelling.
So some of the subliminal messages that are given about women are unfair.
Oh yeah.
And really don't apply across the board. So
No.
I have to say I'm very disappointed that Marisol didn't make it. She's usually very prompt. I'm sure there must be something. She might even sent me a text, and I haven't seen it. But
we'll get her back on the show again, of course, because I remember last time she was in, had a lot of fun with the phone calls that night.
Yeah, well, I wanted to get her on because, she specializes in asylum seeking immigrants.
Right. That's right. She'd be the one to talk to get on the road to getting that done. The path to actual immigration and citizenship. You'd need an immigration lawyer, and that's what she does.
Yes, and what I really wanted her to educate you about is it's not this happy-go-lucky, everybody gets in process that you're led to believe. It is a tedious, painstaking process to go through asylum to seek American citizenship. And not everybody that applies makes it. As a matter of fact, the majority don't make it. But I wanted you to get it from the horse's mouth.
Yeah.
Because the way they play this out, as if everybody that comes in is going to flood into our country and they're going to have asylum, and that's not the way it is. But more importantly, what I want you to understand is President Trump has squashed the aid to Honduras and Guatemala. Now, that is so asinine, I can't believe it, because the people are coming from Guatemala and in that triangle area. And what President Obama did is he gave them aid and sent people over there to help administer the aid to try to lift up the economy so people won't want to leave. So we take the opposite approach of giving them nothing, hoping that if we give them nothing, that people won't want to come.
Right, and I know that there's a lot of discouraged people that aren't coming because they're afraid, they're hearing stories about their children being put in cages and things like that.
Exactly.
And some of us Americans are sitting back and saying, "Well, by golly, they're keeping them out, aren't they?" And you know, that's really not us. Your ancestors came from somewhere, folks, and could you imagine what it would have been like if you'd have never been born here because your ancestors never made it here? That's a thought to think about. I know you don't want to think like that, but wow, it's a big one.
Well, but here's what they'll say. I can answer, but they came here legally. No, everybody that came did not come legally. No. That's for sure.
They had to do what they had to do to get here.
That's right.
And especially those doggone Irishmen. Oh, you want to talk about some discrimination? Irish were discriminated against too.
Yes, they were. Very much so.
But and today, some of them deserve it. I'm only saying that because I've got Irish descent, you know.
Yeah.
But I don't hold dearly the old home country because I don't know it. I've never been there.
Yeah. Well, folks, I'm sorry to disappoint you because I posted on Facebook we're going to talk about immigration tonight, and my immigration attorney didn't show up. But we still engaged you with some dialogue and hopefully gave you some valuable information.
That's right.
And I'd like to thank you for tuning in to the African American scene. God bless and be safe, and I will see you next Wednesday right here at 6 o'clock.
Archives of this show can be found on YouTube. Go to WPSLTV.com and look for the African American Scene with Rudy Howard. This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, celebrating over 25 years and counting.